All right, last but not least, we have the Arabic exercises. We have 16 items chock full of different fricatives and a few stops as well, and some fun vowels to top it all off. There's a lot to go through here. They're kind of organized in minimal pairs or minimal sets, though, to try to make it a little bit simpler. And I guess I'll add on top of this that I got one of the grad students in our program who is an Arabic speaker to record these for us in the sound booth at the phonetics lab. So these are thankfully much higher quality acoustically speaking to work with, which should make this a little bit easier all around to process. And I'll say a few more things about that as we go. But these are the 16 transcriptions grabbed at random from the transcriptions you submitted for the exercise. So they're not necessarily going to be consistent in any way. But when I look at these first four, which, like I said, basically form a minimal set, you all did a very good job with them. So we can take a look at number one. And this is one where there's a little bit of a discrepancy between what I heard and what this transcriber heard. But it begins with that pharyngeal, that voiceless pharyngeal fricative, kind of that loud or emphatic H. But this person kind of caught on to something that I missed. You might see this little bump here, this little release burst looking thing. And they transcribe that as a glottal stop, which I think is a nice way to look at it, actually. So it's not really an aspirated glottal stop, but it's a glottal stop followed by the pharyngeal fricative. And I don't think that would happen consistently if the speaker produced this word multiple times, but it happened in this one. So good on you for noticing that. And then we have the M in the middle, and we have a clear L at the tail end with the two different vowels in the middle. They're all kind of chopped up, segmented nicely in the spectrogram view, so I might as well play all of them and say we're not going to worry about the rest of that so much for the next three because they're all fairly similar, that part of the utterance. We can take a listen to number two and maybe compare it to number one, because the fricative in number two is that glottal fricative, just the regular H, versus number one, the emphatic one or pharyngeal one. Yeah, so we can compare those two if we just highlight them. That's the regular H, and this is the pharyngeal H, or pharyngeal fricative. Yeah, so subtle difference, but it's there, right? And it means something different in Arabic. We don't need to get into specifics, but it matters. So number three. So this one's nice and crunchy. It's the uvular one. And then compare that to number four. We get yeah, so this, or you guys picked up on this, and maybe I should have picked up on it as well. Like, I think phonemically this is all supposed to be the same vowel here in the initial position. They were transcribed as across the board for 1, 2, and 3. This transcriber picked up on the fact that that vowel sounds a little bit different. We can maybe compare that. Or maybe not. But the reason it's changing, I don't know if you hear these as the same or maybe a little bit different. But what's going on here is that we have this pharyngeal fricative at the beginning. And this one genuinely looks a little bit fricative-y. So a lot of times when I see these or hear these so-called voiced pharyngeal fricatives in Arabic, they don't have that much turbulence or frication in them. They seem more like sort of pharyngeal approximants with maybe some glottalization going on as well, like some creaky voice, which kind of makes them fairly similar to the glottal stops that you get in Arabic as well, but they're not the same. You can maybe see a little bit of that creak at the beginning here. It goes by quick and it's relatively high pitched though. So the main thing here is that this is the voiced pharyngeal fricative. And I think you can hear the frication there because we get a nice clean recording of it. And anyways, if you make that sort of pharyngeal articulation here, this vowel might become a little bit more like ah rather than ah. But I think it's basically in the same spot as those, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. But we'll see, Arabic has pharyngalization, and that's basically what happens to the vowels next to pharyngalized consonants, is that they become more like ah, a low back ah. Okay, so I won't say anything further about that. 5 and 6 kind of make a nice little set here. We'll play both of them.
سكن.
That's an aspirated stop in the middle.
سخن.
And that's the voiceless uvular fricative in the middle.
سخن.
And we can see that. Yeah, nice and crunchy. And compare that to number 5, where we get this gap here, silence for the K,
كن.
followed by the aspiration. We've seen that before. So that should be fairly easy to process, hopefully. I'm not going to say anything further about it. Number 7 and number 8 kind of make a pair as well.
تحت.
And number 8.
تحت. تحت.
Yeah, so you guys did well with these two as well. So got the same distinction that I was looking at. Number 7, we can talk a little bit about the stops if you want to. Both of these in these transcriptions have just T followed by an H. That kind of makes sense, knowing that H, these Arabic can have fricatives in all sorts of different places, but I would transcribe that as a aspirated stop. We can look at it here, and she might just be aspirating. She, in a recording situation like this, you're likely to speak really clearly, especially if it's being used for sort of educational purposes. So there's a little bit of aspiration there. I don't know if that's consistent in this speaker's idiolect or dialect or what have you, but it's aspirated either way. The kind of crucial distinction that I want to focus on is this distinction between number 7. That's the crunchy uvular fricative, and this is the sorry, this is not, I messed myself up there. So number 7, yeah, that's the way I wanted it to be. Number 7 is the crunchy uvular fricative. Number 8 is the emphatic. Yeah. So,
تحت.
and this is,
تحت.
and you can see a little bit of that. So voicing and trilling tend to go together. They have what's called a coupling relationship, so you can see a little bit of voicing kind of emerging through that, maybe passively as opposed to this one, even though there seems to be a bit of a trilling effect there. But this is supposed to be the emphatic pharyngeal fricative, and this is supposed to be the uvular. Okay, so hopefully not having confused you too much. We'll move on. Either way, good job with the transcriptions here. Number 9 and number 10 kind of make a pair.
أخبر.
That's number 9.
أخبر.
And I think these two were kind of flipped around a little bit. So what we should have here is number 9 should be the voiceless uvular. I'm not even going to try. Number 9 should be the voiceless uvular fricative, and number 10 should be the voiced one, which is the upside down capital R symbol, kind of as I've got it transcribed here. So we'll listen to those again. This should be the voiceless one, and we got noise in the background.
أخبر.
So this is voiceless here, but like I said, you kind of tend to get that repetitive effect of the trilling on top of the uvular fricative. It's just something your uvula wants to do as you try to produce a fricative there. We can compare it to the voiced one.
أخبر.
And maybe I'll crank this up a bit.
أخبر.
Yeah. That's the voiced version, and this is the voiceless. Yeah.
أخبر.
Yeah. And so some interesting things happen at the tail end of these as well. You get a little bit of trilling here for number 9. I think I'll stick with my sort of key transcriptions here. For number 9, if I can find it again, you get that sort of voiced trill with 1 or 2 pulses. Right here. And then for number 9, somewhere in here, who knows? I'll open it up again. It's more voice. Sorry, number 10. I got that open twice. No wonder I'm messing myself up. For number 10, it winds up being voiceless at the tail end. So you don't get that it gets kind of you don't get that underlying voicing there. You just kind of wind up getting like a 1 or 2 taps with the tongue tip, and you can see hopefully that they look and sound different. Just the tail end of this. Yeah. So she's voicing all the way through here, so she gets a little bit of a vowel. And then also a little bit of sort of, maybe you can call it aspiration or an H here, which is very quiet. So if you transcribe that with a little bit of an H at the end as well, that's fine. This person, I think, kind of put a little bit of a pharyngeal fricative there, which kind of makes sense. All right, number 11.
غباء.
So I'll take a look at this one. It's interesting because it's got that voiced pharyngeal fricative at the beginning. Sorry, voiced uvular fricative. That one, like in, say, French. And then, interestingly enough, this person caught the voiced uvular fricative at the beginning, but then didn't get this little feature at the tail end. It's got a glottal stop at the tail end, this production. And you can kind of see how she transitions into that by giving you more creaky voice into that stop here at the tail end, which is kind of a cue to the fact that this is glottal. Then silence, and then a bit of aspiration at the tail end, like that. Yeah, so the way I've transcribed it here is voiced uvular fricative, like schwa, b, and then like an and then here's our aspirated glottal stop at the tail end. Yeah, so something like that. Number 12. Yeah, so we've got our friend, the voiceless pharyngeal fricative here at the tail end again. Nice and noisier than what we normally expect for a regular H. Yeah, this person put a glottal stop in there, but that's not quite what's going on. Because we get this turbulence all the way through. So you can kind of see that as being distinct from a stop. Number 13 and 14 make a bit of a pair.
سأل.
For 13.
سأل.
Yeah, so we'll listen to these closely, maybe a couple times. Here's 13.
سأل.
And here's 14.
سأل.
And it's interesting, too, because these are two different transcribers. They wound up transcribing both of these the exact same way. I think you can hear that they're different. It depends on kind of what context you're using to interpret this.
سأل.
Like I said, the 14 is kind of the one that's a little tricky because it's this voiced pharyngeal fricative again. Which can sound in certain cases a little bit like it's a glottal stop. It's not, though. 13 is the glottal stop. And again, should be able to see this pretty easily, even if it's hard to hear the distinction. In this one, you see the voicing goes all the way through. We're not getting that much frication, as I mentioned before. This is just a voiced pharyngeal fricative / approximate probably here. Because you'd expect to see something that looks like this if it's a genuine fricative. Some turbulence there. But this is clearly a stop in the middle here. Kind of getting into it with this creaky voice. And then stopping all together before in that noiseless part, before moving on to the next syllable. This is the voiced pharyngeal fricative. This is the glottal stop. And yeah, again, another reason why they're easy to confuse is because the symbols look so similar too, right? It's different orientation for the sort of shepherd's crook there. Last two. Number 15 is the one that really inspired me to make better quality recordings of this, because I had this whole set of lexical items in Arabic from another speaker. And because of the quality of the recording, it was impossible to tell whether this final fricative was interdental or labiodental. Hopefully you can hear in this one it's interdental and it's voiced. I think our candidate transcriber here transcribed it as a voiceless interdental. But it's not. It's you can see the voicing going all the way through. and you can hear it too, right? You can also see this turbulence for the frication on top of it. Yeah, and then this beginning is this sort of confusing voiced pharyngeal fricative rather than the glottal stop per se. But the thing that's tricky or confusing about it is that it looks like it's creaky voice there for a little while, which you would sort of normally more associate with a glottal stop. But in this context, that's part of the voiced pharyngeal fricative. So this transcriber got that right. And we've got an ash here. Not so much a script A. And lastly, we'll take a look at number 16. We've got a candidate transcription of this. Which I kind of like, except for one little thing here in the middle. We can see there's only one little beat here for the rhotic in the middle. It's just a flap or a tap rather than a trill, which is where you get multiple closures of the vocal tract and you get sort of multiple spacing outs of the acoustic signal. Here you get this white sort of strip more than once if it was a trill. But this is the voiced fringe or voiced uvular fricative. I keep doing that rather than the voiced pharyngeal. We can compare those, I guess, to make sure we can hear the distinction. Although, like I said, you guys did a good job with this one. That's pharyngeal. That's uvular. And the rest is basically right on target. Yeah, and like I said, this is not an easy one, but you did well with it. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on in the world of phonetics beyond anything we've been able to cover in this class. I hope you get to see all the rest of it someday, or at least a major part of it. Other than that, I think I'm done for now. I'm going to post these so that they might be of some use to you as you do the exam. I'm a day late on that, but hopefully you'll get a chance to watch at least a little bit of this as you work on that. So I'm going to hang it up there. And as you know, you can always get in touch with me if you have questions about anything. All right, see you around.